No home runs in this pod. We work station to station. Recording date is Thursday, October 26th, and we're back after a few weeks off, a few weeks of reflection, and a few weeks of watching baseball, Dustin.
Yeah, I think been a little bit decompressing from Jay's season, trying to enjoy the playoffs a little bit when I can, and you know get myself hyped up for next year and the off season and all the excitement about who we're gonna see on this team come back, who we're gonna miss, who we're gonna hopefully get some new faces. So it's an exciting time.
Well, I definitely put on some Jays gear the other day, so I think I finished my period of mourning over the season, and am ready to move forward. There's going to be lots to talk about this off season. I think more than maybe ever. Even I think there'll be actually more talk than even the moves probably dictate. But who knows? Maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised with what happens. But baseball is still being played, of course, and we do have our World Series teams now in place. Both the ALCS and the NLCS did go to Game Sevens, and we have the Texas Rangers hosting the first two games against the upstart and very surprising Arizona Diamondbacks.
Absolutely a surprise, for me. Definitely not the bracket that I filled out at the start of the playoffs. I was cheering for the Phillies a little bit as my kind of non-Blue Jays rootable team, like Bryson Stott and some other young guys on that team, Bryce Harper. So a little bit disappointing there in the NLCS, but I like to see some former Blue Jays get an opportunity at a World Series.
I think people were pretty much writing the Phillies in to the World Series after the first two games, and that's not really how it turned out. Following that, the Diamondbacks went on to, of course, win the series, but the Phillies were up two to nothing, and then 3-2, and could not close it out. And I did feel some Blue Jays kind of vibes with the Phillies. A little bit different numbers, that these players are being paid. But Dustin, in the last two games, the Phillies, I guess, big four, Schwarber, Turner, Harper, and Castellanos, 1 for 28 with one RBI. Kevin Barker, I've been listening to Blair and Barker of late. I'm actually getting quite endeared to Kevin Barker. I like him a lot, and he was just like he had ants in his pants. It sounded like, because he was just ripping the Phillies apart. The Phillies. I watched some of the series. I do have a young son, of course, so I don't really stay up to watch all the game, but I try to watch all the highlights. And the first two games, the Phillies were just bashing the Diamondbacks heads in, and they just seemed to get a little swing happy. And those last two games, the Diamondbacks actually whiffed 21 Phillies batters. Like, they were swinging for the fences. Philadelphia was.
Absolutely, yeah. They're a mashing team, and they showed it throughout the whole playoffs and the first two games, anyways, of this series, the NLCS. But yeah, it kind of collapsed a little bit, even though they kept it up a touch. But as you say, there was Arizona just came on strong and pulled out the victory in the end. It was interesting to see. Like they made it kind of an interesting series on both ends. Seven game sevens are fun to see. They're if you're a fan of one of the teams, especially, it's nerve wracking and exciting all at once, and it's everything you love to see. That sort of winner take all game.
Well, Dustin, the other thing that Kevin Barker mentioned that put a smile on my face. Basically, the Phillies have built their team essentially with lots of money, and
Hmm.
those four players, plus either JT Realmuto, their catcher,
Hmm.
$1 billion was basically committed to put the top half of that lineup together, and
Jeez. Really?
They do not win the World Series again. So there's definitely going to be some looking in the mirror in Philly, and saying that I don't know. They don't think there's actually going to be many changes because all of these players are
Why
signed and
would you?
will be,
Yeah.
yeah, and be signed for a while, so it'd be more tweaking. I feel like, again, feel like the Jays kind of again where they're like, oh yeah, we got this good team, we're gonna just tweak it a bit. I don't think the Jays lineup comes close to any like in terms of I'm going to take the Diamondbacks as an aside, and we're going to talk about them in a moment. But I don't think the Jays lineup really even comes close to the Rangers, the Astros, or the Phillies. And I think that's really, at the end of the day, the difference between a team that crashes out in the wild card round and a team that goes deep and makes the World Series.
Well, there's no doubt about that. I mean, the Blue Jays, at least, in results, were not as good as any of these teams. I think, I mean, if you listen to some of the conversations before the season started, that on paper they should have been close to what this team, and if, and we've talked about it quite a bit over the last few podcasts, but, if really there's like kind of four guys that I see, and some others have been talking about it, like Ben Nicholson Smith. If um, Dalton Varsho, Kirk, George Springer, and Vladdy were probably even 50% better this year. I mean, I think this lineup could have rivaled some of these teams. It's just, yeah, well, those four guys especially kind of um, didn't live up to what we, on paper thought they should have been.
Well, living up to what they should have been, the Texas Rangers. This team, and actually, I should say that part of me was hoping that the Phillies would make the World Series and face the Texas Rangers because that would have been basically swinging for the fences every
Yeah, that
single
would have
game.
been
It would
a
have been
nasty
something to
series.
see. I don't know. We did have a close up of the Texas Rangers in that 4 game series in September. It really just saw them just take apart the Jays. A player like Corey Seager, borderline, you couldn't get him out, and he's
Yeah.
been showing himself to be, he was been no worse in the playoffs, right? And he took, I think, a high fastball, like like this fastball was above the letters, and he, pulls his hands in and just rips it like over 400 feet. And so the Rangers, I don't think we need to really talk about them too much. We know that they're gonna just try to swing their way to the World Series, and they've made it, and we'll see how it all goes down against a team that I think the Jays fans have probably had their eye on most of the playoffs, although they probably didn't expect much from them. The Arizona Diamondbacks, and they've got some significant contributions from some former Jays, and I think Jays fans definitely not happy the way the season ended, of course, with the Jays result. But seeing the Diamondbacks in the World Series with Gabby Moreno and Lourdes Gurriel, I wouldn't say maybe not leading the way, but basically significant contributors to this success, I think stings at this point.
Yeah, I'm seeing it all over Twitter. Uh, you know, a lot of hand wringing and gnashing of teeth over the Varsho trade. Seeing these guys go to the World Series now, and Gabriel Moreno has come up with a few kind of clutch hits to give Arizona, you know, some wins here. And every time I, every time he does, you see the hot takes on Twitter, calling for Ross Atkins' head because, Gabriel Moreno hit a, RBI single that won the game. Um, you
Well,
know,
it won them the pennant. He
yeah,
had the winning hit that won them the pennant, Dustin.
I know. Yeah, I know. But if he's on the Blue Jays, does the Blue Jays do what the Arizona Diamondbacks do? Like, I'm not so sure. I, I
Well,
think that.
okay, but let's get into this a bit because I know we I know you had a lot of thoughts on this, and I did post a tweet, I don't know, a couple days ago, and I during the season, I actually, I should preface this by saying, like, I really like Dalton Varsho. Um, I just really like that hustle. I love the defense. I love the base running. But I don't know. I just don't understand. And of course, this is totally revisionist, right? Like going back, looking back, and we can't go
Absolutely.
back in time. And I generally don't like to do this. I generally do not like to do this, but I
You
just
jumped on the
don't. I
bandwagon.
no, but you know what? It's just hearing, listen to Blair and Barker, and listen to this
Hmm.
podcast and that podcast, and I just generally don't understand, like, what I just don't understand what made sense. Now, of course, this is based on 2023 results, right?
Right.
But I just don't understand how, like, where, like, what numbers were being used to make sense of this on the J side.
Well, I can tell you what numbers weren't being used is the 2023 numbers that both Varsho and Moreno put up, and Loader Score L to a certain degree. But you, if you, I'm sure if you told Ross Atkins that Varsho would put up, uh, you know, what was he like 20 something
220.
average? Yeah, 220 average. I think he had like an 80 something OPS plus. Uh, you know, I'm not sure he would do the deal. Maybe he would. Um, but I mean, honestly, if you look at the numbers, Varsho put up a pretty good season last in 2022, fairly comparable to Moreno. And I'm sure there's a lot of kind of scouting and eyes, and it's not just about numbers that go into these kinds of decisions. But I'm sure you can kind of dream on a guy that has a lot of promise, that still fairly young, left-handed bat, can play a premium outfield position, probably looking to be the center fielder in the long term. You've got an area of strength that you're dealing from in three catchers that you can't find um, at bats for all of them. And, the deal was, I mean, you listen to um, the early podcast that we did at the beginning of the year, and I know we'll get to that a little more deeper later. But I mean, when we were talking about Varsho during those podcasts, we were talking about how this was a pretty good trade. He's young. He's got a lot of promise. He's got a lot of speed on the base paths. It adds the defense and the run prevention that we were looking for at the time. I mean, it kind of answered all the questions that we were asking. Um, and yeah, it was a steep price. I mean, now in hindsight, and that's kind of what irks me. I'm seeing a lot of these hot takes on Twitter about how Ross Atkins should be fired because of this. It's like, come on, like this was a good deal at the time. Ross Atkins doesn't have a crystal ball. I think you know, uh, I don't think it's as big a deal um, as a lot of people making it out to be, and I'm going to be increasingly more upset as the years go on, and Gabriel Moreno, is now an all-star, or he's like, you know, hitting, whatever 325 home runs. I don't know. Like, let me ask you this: at the end of 2024, if the numbers are reversed and Dalton Varsho hits, you know, 295 and
Well, that's
20
not
home
going to
runs,
happen. That's very unlikely to happen, though. So hold on.
well, why?
I want to jump. Well, because there's no. He hit 235 before he joined the Jays, right? Two for
Okay,
235, 27 home runs, right? That's not a great average, right? Now I'm not.
but that's a good that's a
These
good
are
home run
players.
number. What
It
was his
is.
OPS plus?
So I don't have his OPS plus. I have his OPS, and
What
so
was
actually,
that?
I'm gonna. So I actually have his, because I like WAR because it's a general
Okay.
catch. It's a catch-all. So, like, I think there are some numbers here that do support, like, this is a good player, and this is something that seemed like a good deal at the time. You know, I do think that part of a major league team and trades is also projecting, right? So, like,
Hmm.
what is this player going to do, right? And right on the evidence available with Dalton Varsho, he is not going to hit for a high average. Now, as I said, maybe he spends the entire offseason in the cage and he improves those, bat to ball skills, as they say. But right now, he's a low average guy who has like when he connects has power. And in terms of what I saw last season, he struck out a lot at the beginning. He then kind of turned those strikeouts into pop ups and like groundouts,
Yeah,
right? So he didn't have like Matt Chapman level strikeouts. Like at the beginning, he was striking out a lot, but he did end the season with 20 home runs. But it in terms of 2022, Dalton Varsho, his wins above replacement 4.9.
that's pretty
That's
good.
quite that's Dustin. That's very good, right?
Yeah, it's
Anything above
2023.
4 is good, right? And so offensively, and because WAR is a is a number that comprises both offensive numbers and defensive
Right.
numbers.
His
In
2023 WAR is 3.9.
3.9, right?
That's pretty good.
But it is good. So 2022 4.9, his offensive WAR, so the component of that 4.9, uh, which was offensive, was actually 2.9, whereas in 2023 his offensive WAR is 0.8. Like that's Cavabigio numbers, right? Now
Right.
last year, we can't really look back to last year for Moreno. Didn't really feature too highly, of course, on the Jays. So WAR is
Yeah.
not really something we could really look at. But this year's 2023 WAR 4.3, and his offensive, I guess, contribution to that is 1.9. So basically, like half his WAR is essentially offensive, and the rest is defensive. I think the biggest thing on this for me, and trying to take a real step back, is giving up your top prospect, right? And I was actually doing, we started this recording a little bit later than I had hoped, and part of that was me reading up on like articles at the time and kind of all of that. And Ross Atkins, apparently his advisors were essentially split on this. There was one camp who basically said, "No, you can't do this. He's your bet. He's your top prospect," and the other camp basically said, "No, I think this is worth what you're getting back." Right now,
Right.
it remains. I'm not sure I'm going to agree with Mark Shapiro and say that, oh, you can't. You have to judge a trade after 5 years. Like he may not be the president in 5 years, so hold on there. But right now, as it stands, I think the Jays have significantly lost this trade. The Lourdes Gurriel edition. So last year, 2.2 WAR, 1.8 of that was offensive, and then that increases to 3.0. So he had surgery late last year on his hand, I believe, and
Hmm.
so there was probably some concerns about could he replicate his hitting before, but he increased his WAR to 3.0. His OPS went from 743 to 772. So the other thing on top of giving up your top prospect, not only giving up your top prospect, you're giving up another player as well. So it's like a 2 for 1. I just and I said this is from someone who like I want Dalton Varsho to be really good. Like ideally in a perfect world, I go to sleep at night and I dream about Dalton Varsho and Gabby Moreno in the same lineup. But that's obviously never gonna happen. But
Right. Well,
um yeah, I don't know.
before you,
The numbers just don't make any sense to me. Like I just don't
yeah, I know,
understand
but
how this all got put together.
because you're looking at it from a, Gabriel Moreno turned out to be a pretty good player point of view, right? How do we know that? How do we know in 2022 or the beginning of this year that that's going to be the case, right? If you're the Diamondbacks GM, I don't know his name, but if you're looking at making this trade, you're giving up Dalton Varsho, who has had two pretty good successful years to that time in the major leagues. He's proven himself to be pretty good defensively, good on the base pass, all these things that we've just talked about. He's, a proven kind of major league player, and you're giving him up for, a below average defensive outfielder who's,
Hmm.
streaky in what's his name?
Gurriel.
Gurriel, and a prospect. Yes, a pretty good prospect, a highly touted prospect, but they say prospects will break your heart. I mean, you're taking a risk there if you're the Arizona Diamondbacks, GM. So obviously he's going to want a little bit of something, in that addition of, uh, you know, that major league player that maybe has some flaws, but and then the the prospect. So yeah, again, we're looking at it hindsight 2020, and like I was
Hmm.
trying to say earlier, it's like if Dalton Varsho has 2024 that is, you know, uh, really good, a 5 WAR season, let's say, right? Because if we're talking about, Dalton Varsho had a pretty by all metrics, a pretty bad offensive year. um, I mean, his OPS plus is 85, and if you don't know what OPS plus is, it like basically normalizes OPS to 100. So like 100 is like league average. So if you're 85, that's you're below league average OPS plus or OPS. So
Well,
he
yeah,
had a
and league average OPS is 730, by the way. His
right
and Dalton Varsho's OPS in
674.
six, yeah, 674.
Right. So
So
he put together basically a 4 WAR season with a below average OPS. I mean, if he puts together the season that, offensively that we think he can, and now Kevin Kiermaier's not there, so he's in a premium position. He's going to be playing center field for the Jays for a long time, probably if, they don't get a center fielder in free agency or other trades or whatever. But, then that he has the opportunity to really be a close to 5 WAR player, if he can put together, a little bit better offense. So, I mean, I think that's worth um, at the time, like at the beginning of 2023. I think that trade made some sense. Now, as you say, it was risky. I mean, it was risky on both parts. I'm sure there are people who at the time in Arizona were like, how can we give up Varsho? I mean, he's a proven major league player, center fielder, or gonna be that, you know. So I don't know. It's a lot of hand wringing, a lot of sort of hindsight mining, um, and it happens on the other side. I mean, Gabriel Moreno had some stretches this year that were not looking too good, and I've saw people on Twitter saying, "Oh, what are all the Gabriel Moreno kind of fans thinking now?" And it happens on both sides where you kind of look at these small samples and these short-term kind of successes and failures, and you say, you know, this was good or bad. I mean, I think the way we should be looking at it is like, did this improve the Blue Jays? Probably. I mean, like, I don't think Gabriel Moreno had a spot. Like, can we get Dalton Varsho for Kirk? It's not like we can just easily swap those players out and say, well, that would have been
no,
better,
you're
right?
correct.
Like,
Let's jump back to, okay. So let's say that this trade doesn't happen. So we have Moreno, we have Kirk, and we have Jansen, right? So Moreno's, you're correct. Is he's probably not going to make the major league roster, right?
mhm.
But Danny Jansen is going to get injured, like that is a
Right,
certainty, and so he would have probably
sure.
seen time. Now,
Not a
I don't
full
know, like,
season,
no, not a full
right?
season, and you're correct on that. But looking at these three catchers right now, you have Jansen, a catcher who, he's kind of what Varsho kind of is, but in a different position. Like he is a low average, high power guy. Kirk was a little bit less power, but he seems to his average was supposed to be pretty good. And we have Moreno now. I don't know. I think the projections of Kirk and we'll see what happens in 2024, but I don't I heard Kevin Barker talk about some GMs and sorry, maybe it was Jeff Blair, but basically GMs if he was offered up like thinking that they dodged a bullet because you know, Alejandro Kirk did not really have a good year following his Silver Slugger uh 2022.
Hmm.
And as Kevin Barker put it, he's a turtle on the base pass, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you have a turtle on the base pass, you have a guy who's constantly injured, and then you have your top prospect, your idea. And I'm not saying you, I'm saying this in general. Like your idea is to trade the top prospect. Like I don't know. It's just I. One of the things go listing back to the earlier episodes to pick up on our predictions that you mentioned was that Shapiro and Atkins, like one of their goals is to build a sustainable winner. And I would agree that this is seemingly what they've attempted to do over their I don't know how long have they been around for since what 2015 16
2016, 2016.
2016 yeah so and I think they have done that but this is I don't think this gets you you know, consistently like I don't think giving away top like and again I say giving away that's obviously not what happened, but top prospects I think we see with like the Baltimore Orioles this year. Well, we see what happens when top prospects come good, right? They
Hmm.
won the division and kind of and ran away with it, but I don't know. It's just like a numbers thing for me. Like I don't dislike Dalton Varsho. I don't dislike what he brings to the team. Like I actually really hope he does well. I if he I'd consider getting a Varsho jersey in the future. Like that I like him that much.
Yeah.
But I just don't understand like where the numbers and how this all came together and especially from an organization that is so analytically and process driven it just I don't know it really and again I feel like I've been somewhat numb to it throughout the season and it's not just them making the World Series. Like I don't that's not it for me. I think that's a bit kind of delicious for Jays fans who maybe are not very happy with the way that the team is being run. That definitely is a feather in their cap. But yeah, it just I don't know. It just doesn't seem to add up for me. But hey, I'm not running a baseball team.
Okay, I'd be repeating myself, so I'll give you the last word.
Well, Dustin, I think that's all the time we have. Thank you very much for joining me.